This is Frank Islam, Chairman and CEO of FY Investment Group and your host of Washington Current Review, where we interview leading voices from business and politics that impact you, the viewer. Today, our guest is Lt Col Lewis Rhodes. Thank you very much for coming to our show, and thank you for your service to our nation. And we, all of us, owe a sincere gratitude to the people who serve our country, who protect our democracy. So tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, as you said, I'm a lieutenant colonel in the Marine Corps Reserve as a reservist. So I also have a civilian job. I work as an attorney, as an in-house counsel for a company, Microtechnologies, and my CEO Tony Jimenez is a longtime friend of yours.
Yes, he is.
I've been in the Marine Corps for active or reserve for almost 22 years.
So you served in the Marine Corps, and then you became in reserve, right? Is that what you did?
Yes, I went
and
on.
How long did you serve in the Marine Corps?
Well, I was on active duty for a little over 7 years.
Okay.
I went to the United States Naval Academy in Annapolis.
Okay.
I graduated there in 1994, and upon graduation, I decided that the Marine Corps was the way for me. Marines. I always say the Marines were the best. So if you're gonna be in the military, you might as well go all the way. So that's why I chose, and I went into Marine Corps, got commissioned in May of 1994, and I stayed on active duty until actually August of 2001. I left active duty.
And after you left, then what did you do after that?
I had started law school as a nighttime student.
Where did you go to law school?
I went to Georgetown Law School.
Okay, good. Good place.
Yeah, it's a good school. And I was stationed in Washington, D.C., and I went at night at Georgetown for my first couple of years. And I left active duty to finish up my legal education. Only I left active duty, as I said, in August of 2001.
Okay.
So shortly after 9/11, I had been in the reserves already. I found myself mobilized and back on active duty for a couple of years.
Great. So from the Marine Corps as well as transition to the civilian life to the Army Reserve, how did the transition work? And now that you work as a legal counsel for the high-tech IT company called Microtech.
Yes.
So how did the transition work, and what kind of experience did you gain that you utilize it in your job right now? Besides the discipline.
Okay, yeah, the discipline. But there's
and the leadership qualities.
Yes, well, the leadership and the ability to work under pressure obviously is something any veteran brings that a lot of other people haven't had. God bless them, haven't had that experience. I've been to combat a couple of times, and so at work when I talk to people and things are getting a little stressful and they ask me how I can stay calm, I say, when you've had people shoot at you a few times, it puts everything else in perspective as far as the degree of stress.
Absolutely right.
But my transition from leaving active duty to reserves, mine was a little unusual in that the timing of it. Like I said, I left active duty just prior to 9/11, and I was only off active duty for about 3 months, and then I was called back up as a reservist and spent the next 2 years on active duty, including with the Marine Corps division that invaded Iraq in 2003. So then when I came back from Iraq, I really kind of did my transition into.
So you served in Iraq. But you didn't? Did you go to Afghanistan also?
I was in Iraq in 2003 when it all first started, and then I went to Afghanistan in 2011 through 2012. I was there, so I was a young guy when I went to Iraq. I was a little bit old in the tooth by Marine Corps standards when I went to Afghanistan.
And how was the life in Iraq and Afghanistan as an American? It's both a Muslim country. They don't drink alcohol. They don't consume alcohols. They also were strict religiously. So what was your experience, and what do you think of your experience there in Afghanistan as well as in Iraq?
Well, they're very different theaters, very different people, and very different countries. And the times I went there, they were also very different in the, I guess the war cycle. I was there at the very beginning of Iraq. I was with the first 1,000 guys across the border the day the war started in March.
And what part of Iraq did you serve?
Well, I was part of the invading forces. We cleared all the way up to Baghdad. After Baghdad fell and we consolidated, my unit ended up staying through the summer of '03 in a city called Diwania, which is hour and a half or so south of Baghdad, in a predominant Shia area. At that point in time, in 2003, a lot of the locals who were the Shiite Muslims were pretty happy that Saddam was gone. I left Iraq in September of '03, and somehow I never managed to get back there, which I assumed I probably would have. But you know, my experiences there were mostly positive. Most of the people we worked with in that area were friends of the U.S. They liked what we did. They didn't like Saddam. Saddam was a pretty oppressive tyrant to the Shiites.
Well, he was a Sunni.
Yes. You know, we saw some of the mass graves from the early '90s.
Yes.
Early '90s. You know, uprising by the Shiites where they were put down kind of in force. Heard all kinds of horror stories from the locals. But so my experiences there at that point in time were mostly positive with the Iraqi people that I interacted with.
What about your experience in Afghanistan?
Afghanistan is a much tougher nut to crack. Unfortunately, a lot of us have come back from there a little more jaded than we came back from
And
Iraq.
what part of Afghanistan were you there?
I was in northern Helmand province.
Sure.
The Marine Corps went in 2008, 2009, went in with a heavy presence in the Helmand province to clear out Helmand and drive the Taliban out of that area, which is down, Helmand is down in the southwestern corner of Afghanistan and not far from the Iranian border.
And Afghanistan is a Sunni, not the Shia, as you know.
Yes.
The Shia population is very, very, very small.
Yes, and you know why obviously they're all Sunni Muslims. The Afghanistan is also very tribal.
It is.
So the tribal loyalties there mean almost more than any type of the different religious sects, and a lot of the tribal infighting. And what's been sad to see over the last year or so is, as the Marine Corps is drawn down, as we know, the policy has been to withdraw our troops into a smaller
And President
number.
Obama did. So my next question to you is, Lieutenant Colonel, you serve our country well, and we thank you very much for that. And this is how we protect our democracy and advance our leadership in the world. Do you think that we should, first of all, I'm not going to ask you a critical question, why did we invade Iraq? That's a different question.
Yeah.
And I think you can sit here, there's all kinds of theories, but that's behind us. But I do want to know, should we engage ourselves in Afghanistan now by keeping the military over there in order to train the Afghani so that they can serve their country?
You know, there's a lot of layers to that onion, and you know, this is just me speaking. I'm not a policy voice for the Marine Corps.
I am asking your personal opinion.
Afghanistan, even when it was a stable country from the 1930s through the 1980s, was never really a country.
Right. When the Russian invaded.
In 1980, 1979.
79. Under the Carter administration.
Yeah. You know, they had a saying back then that the power of the king was one day's horse ride out of Kabul. So it was never really a country like we think of a country, where we identify ourselves as Americans. We live in the United States. We recognize our federal authority. When you got, you know, a couple hundred miles away from Kabul, there was never any government power. So really, when we went in there in 2001, and over the last, you know, 14 years or so, we've been trying to build a country that didn't really exist to begin with. So clearly it's going to be a lot of hurdles to jump.
So should we keep our forces there in order to make sure that Afghanistan remains secure and stable?
You know, on one level, I say it's the right thing to do, because, you know, there are people over there that want to do the right thing. On the other side of the coin, I look at, you know, I've seen Marines get killed over there. I've seen people lose legs. I've seen the United States spend billions of dollars, and I've seen very little traction made. So on the other hand, you know, it seems like we're putting a lot of effort and getting a lot of Americans killed without a lot of gain.
So on that heart and spirit in mind, as you just said, we didn't really accomplish anything. in a sense that that's your personal opinion. So what should we do in Syria right now?
You know, in a perfect world, I'd say, you know, my personal opinion is we let
I'm
everybody.
looking at your personal opinion.
Yeah, everybody just let them fight it out and not
fight it.
get involved. Unfortunately, you know, when we see what happens in Paris.
Should we have a safety zone there for the? Should we have some kind of a zone that protects some of the people over there in Syria, and let Assad has his own regime, which he can rule a small part of that Syria?
You know, that,
there's a lot of theory.
There's
one theory. There's also this theory has been put on the table.
You know, Assad is like so many other of the Middle Eastern strongmen, right?
Yeah, he's a tyrant.
They're tyrants and they're brutal to their people.
They are.
But on the flip side, they provide a little bit of stability and security to the area. So it's really pick your poison, right? Do we let these tyrants continue to be brutal dictators, or do we let them go, which then turns into what Libya is today? Libya is ISIS.
I think Libya eventually will prevail. It will become stable, and Libya is better off without Gaddafi. Without Gaddafi.
I hope it gets there in the long run. I'm still hopeful that Iraq will get there eventually. I thought Iraq had hope. I had hope that Iraq would get to that position originally, and it was sad to see, you know, they succumbed to partisan and religious fighting, and which is what allowed ISIS to gain such a foothold in Iraq.
Do you think we have done the right thing in terms of having a U.S.-Iran nuclear deal? Again, personal question.
I don't trust the Iranians. What
our choices are, what we had was not sustainable since 1979. They need to become a partner with us, with every other country, in order for us to fight against the terrorism.
Yeah, and well, I'm a firm believer, you know, what's the adage that says one democracy has never attacked and invaded another democracy? I'm a firm believer that peace, you know, the best way to achieve peace is through capitalism. So once people can, and we saw it in Iraq, what led to the Sunni awakening and the stability in Ramadi and Fallujah was a lot of the tribal chieftains there realized that they had a better financial deal in agreeing with the United States and opening themselves up for U.S. money and trade deals and capitalism than they did by siding with the Al-Qaeda in Iraq. And it was once they made that decision, Iraq, for us, tipped overnight.
So I'm going to shift the gears to get to the emotional disorder that the veterans have. What do you think of that? I mean, this is a very sad situation. What's going on?
It's absolutely tragic.
It breaks my heart. They serve our country, and we sometimes we leave them alone. We don't do anything about them.
It's you know, it's astounding when you look at the numbers and
the suicide.
The suicide numbers are the big ones. And you know what is heartbreaking is more veterans have committed suicide than we've had military members killed in Iraq and Afghanistan combined over the last 15 years. And it's one of the most tragic things going on today in the military and veteran community.
So how do we help them? What do we need to do as a country?
You know, I've had a lot, obviously those of us who've been through this have a lot of conversations. You know, and we always harken back and look at World War II is an example I look at. In World War II, everybody in this country put on a uniform. Almost every male in his 20s was overseas in Europe or Pacific fighting, going through terrible, terrible experiences. They all came home together, and when they went to their small towns, everybody in their town, all their friends did the same thing. And they all could go to the VFW, the American Legion, they could sit around, drink some beers, and talk to each other about it. What's unfortunate today, I think the numbers say only 1% of the current population in the United States has put on a uniform during the last decade of the war. So you have a lot of these kids that they go to war, they experience unbelievable emotional tragedies, and then they go back home, they leave the military, they go home, and there's nobody they can talk to. And
so what should we do?
You know, I wish I had a great answer. You know, recognizing a veteran, the thank you for your service is great.
Yeah.
I love when people say it. Yeah. And I know everybody says it with heartfelt, and they mean it.
They mean it. You're absolutely right.
But over time, it starts to ring a little hollow when you hear it lots and lots of times. One of the other problems is veteran unemployment is triple the unemployment rates of general society.
And your company is a veteran-owned company.
I am. I work for Microtech. Tony Jimenez is a retired Army officer.
Yes. Do you give a preference to the veterans to give them a job? Do you train them? First, they're going to need to be trained in IT in order for them to have a job.
We do. I think when we last ran our numbers, I want to say about 30% of our employees are veterans.
Well, that's a wonderful thing to do.
And so we make an effort. I know there's other companies out there that have veteran programs.
Well, you have been the beneficiary, your company have been the beneficiary of the kindness and generosity of the American taxpayer, because a lot of contact is veteran set-aside.
Veteran set-aside.
And it is your responsibility to fulfill that obligation is by hiring the veterans.
Yeah. And I honestly believe every company in this country has an obligation to go above and beyond.
No question about that,
veterans.
But you have more obligation because your all contracts is a veteran set-aside contracts.
And like I said, we're very, and as we get contract awards, especially ones on military contracts and Department of Defense, most of the people we hire are veterans, because that's generally who gravitates towards those jobs.
Do you nurture them? Do you train them? Do you empower them? Do you help them? Do you support them emotionally? There's many factors involved here.
And we do. I mean, a company like Microtech will, because there's so many veterans running around there, and we kind of take care of our own. But when you look at, as a society, what can we do?
Yeah,
I think the most key word you said was empower. Veterans are people who made a commitment that most people don't understand. Every veteran agreed that they're willing to change their life for the ideals of the United States. Whether they were a direct rifle carrying guy, or they went overseas and were on FOBs that were getting rocketed or hit with mortars, they've all made a massive commitment, and most of them did it when they were kids.
No question about that.
And so they know what it means to sacrifice and dedicate to something. And what unfortunately happens to a lot of these kids is they come back from these wars, they leave the military, they go out into the general civilian society, and it's, well, what do I do now? When you have
So they don't blend well?
It's not that they don't blend well, it's that the military is a service, it's a calling.
Yes, it is.
And then
no question, it is a calling, that's a good way to put it.
And when that's over, and I struggle with this at times, even being a reservist and being a civilian sometimes.
You could be a role model for these veterans.
I try. When you're out of that and you've had such massive responsibility and that is gone, it's a huge hole that you have. And I'm sure you can relate. When you run a company and then you move on from running your company, now you say, I've got to find other ways to direct my energy.
I was ready for the next
plateau. You were ready.
Next plateau in my journey.
Yes.
And that's the best thing that I've ever done.
Yes. So what happens to a lot of these kids, they leave the military and they go back to their hometowns and they end up on a factory, or they end up on a job that it's a job and it's a paycheck, but it doesn't have the same type of So how
do we train them?
I think
we need new technology, empower them with education and economic mobility. If we do that, they can do wonders.
Absolutely.
I'm a strong believer in that.
I think one of the things that we all should do is, when we get an applicant who's a veteran for a job, if they don't have the skills, I think, whenever possible,
the opportunity.
We should hire them and train them.
Yeah. But the problem, I think, they have the small company.
It's hard when you have 100 people in your company.
Yeah.
If you're
and it costs money for them. But it has to be mutual, shared goals and shared responsibility.
Absolutely.
And shared sacrifices.
But empower, veterans can be empowered in ways outside of just jobs. One example I read one time is, when you're getting on an airplane and someone finds out you're a veteran, put that guy in the exit row, because you know what? And this guy, you can look this guy in the eye and say, hey, you can handle this. You know what to happen if things go south. And those small little things have a massive impact on these guys.
And a strong influence and makes a positive difference in their life.
It makes a big difference because you're telling them that, you know what, I recognize your service and I recognize your skills that you developed in your service, and I'm going to utilize them. Something silly like, hey, you know what, you're going to be my guy I'm going to put in the exit row on this airplane because, God forbid anything bad happens, I know you can keep your cool.
So I want to ask you one question. So look at the camera and tell the people, the young people who wants to join the Army and military and serve our country, what advice do you have for them?
It'd be the best thing you ever did in your life. I've accomplished a few good things in my life. I've got a great job. I've got a great law school education. I've got a great wife and 4 wonderful children. And next to my kids, I think the most impressive, important thing I've done in my life is serving the Marine Corps. And if you asked any one of my kids to define what their dad does, even though it's my part-time job, I think most of them would say Dad's a Marine. And
that comes first and foremost.
It comes first and foremost because it defines the character of who you are. And when you join the military, whatever branch you join, I'm partial that the Marines are the best.
Sure.
But any branch you join, you're going to be around the best people that this country has to offer. And your friends and your colleagues will be the best and the brightest.
No question about it. Well, thank you very much for your service, and thank you for coming to the show, and thank you for talking to our young people who are the hope for tomorrow. And you do well, but do good.
Thank you, and thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
You're most welcome. Thank you for watching the show. This is Frank Islam wishing you a great week.